Okay, film class, week 12. Let's talk about Sunset Boulevard, one of the greatest films ever made. The director of Sunset Boulevard is Billy Wilder. You already know Billy Wilder from Double Indemnity. Um, I try to give a lot of this course. I think it's useful. You see more than one. There's three David Lynch films, two Alfred Hitchcock films, and two Billy Wilder films. So I'm trying to, yeah, I think it's useful to see more than one film by the same director, but also I don't want to overdo it because if we do that too much, then you don't get it to see. It's hard because you only get to pick 14 movies. Do I want to show you as many different directors as possible? Because there's something valuable. I think you probably agree with me on this about seeing movies by the same director and thinking about their themes that pop up again and again. But anyway, Sunset Boulevard, Billy Wilder. Um, Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond. It's one of the great films of all time, and Norma Desmond is one of the great characters of all time. So let's just jump right in and start talking about it. The first things in the movie I need you to remember for this unit is the title card. Most films, when they put a title up, they use some kind of computer technology or whatever to superimpose the title so that they take a shot of something, and then they place the title as like on top of that. They use it's not really, if you were standing there you wouldn't see it. They do it in post. They do it after the movie has been filmed. Sunset Boulevard's not like that. In Sunset Boulevard, the title of the movie is the street sign Sunset Boulevard. I really like that detail. That's the title. It's an object. The title of the film is visible to the characters in the film. It's the sign, Sunset Boulevard. It's very unusual for a movie to have the title be something the characters can see. But we will see the same thing when we get to the next movie and our final David Lynch movie, which you will notice, like Sunset Boulevard, is called Mulholland Drive. Both Sunset Boulevard and Mulholland Drive are both streets in LA. Um, so please remember that because it's going to come up when we get to our next movie, Mulholland Drive. All right. The camera moving over the pavement. That's David Lynch loves to see the camera moving over pavement like a car. You see it in Lost Highway. I don't have a lot to say about that. Right. We got a dead narrator. Notice that that's almost, he's even more dead than Walter in Double Indemnity. Walter in Double Indemnity was narrating while dying, and then he died just over after the movie was over. So he had been shot with his death wound. He's mortally wounded in Double Indemnity, and he narrates the whole movie. Sunset Boulevard, and I mentioned that this is like fate. Like there's no way for him to escape. But like he could have gone to a hospital maybe. But like, oh boy, Sunset Boulevard is narrated by an actual person who is definitely dead face down in the pool. And you probably don't care very much, but it's a fucking cool shot to have the camera underwater shooting up on Gillis floating in the water. It's fucking cool. That's not an easy shot to get in 1950, which is when the film was made. It's fucking cool. Um, okay. So what I want to start with, one of the things this film does really well is space. It's very good at show location and setting. Um, Joe Gillis, for example, we learn a lot about him just by looking at the apartment that he's in. He's got his typewriter on his bed. The apartment is messy and it is very small, and he's working in a bathrobe. It just tells you a lot about his sort of poverty level. And of course, the guy's knocking on the door and they're repossessing his car, just in case you missed the detail that he doesn't have like a ton of money. But it's a great detail about him. Um, right, he's trying to sell screenplays to Hollywood, and people are not interested. The One of the great things about one of the real details I really like in this movie that's very clever, and this is the kind of thing that a lot of students will miss, and so it's really worth it to point it out. When Joe Gillis goes to the Hollywood studio to pitch his movies, um, he's just there to make money. He's trying to make money. He's just coming up with simple movies that will make money in Hollywood. But he says something. He says something really important in that first meeting with the guy with the cigar when we first meet Betty Schaefer. I love Betty Schaefer so much. But he says something really important in that meeting with the cigar, where he talks about, look, it's not. This is not James Joyce. This is not Dostoevsky. James Joyce and Dostoevsky. Oh my God, I'm not going to delete that. I'm going to leave that mistake right in there. James Joyce and Dostoevsky are famous, important, major literary figures. The fact that he knows their names is important. That's an important character detail. It tells you something about him, which is that, and we learn a little, he used to be a journalist in Ohio, and he's come to Hollywood to be a screenwriter, and he's pitching these dumb movies, just movies that, like, popcorn blockbusters that he thinks will just make him he needs some money because he's poor. But you can see the fact that he mentions James Joyce and Dostoevsky, who are two of the most important novelists in sort of the modern world. Is that, and by the way, their books are massive. James Joyce and Dostoevsky, they write these mega novels. They're very important pieces of literature that they don't even really teach very often in college because they're so fucking long. These huge books. But it tells you Joe Gillis is a smart guy. Joe Gillis started out in Hollywood trying to make art. And this is an exaggeration, but shit like 2001 and Persona. Right? That he was interested in art. And that's why he's so fucking poor. Because he wanted to do something arty. And now he doesn't have any money. And he's like, I'm just going to make a blockbuster about a guy who cheats at baseball. Because he thinks that'll make money. But it tells you about his character, that he knows those people's names. Okay, cool. And actually, Betty Schaefer comes in. And she makes fun of his script for being like a little silly. Because it doesn't have a message or a meaning. And he jokes, oh, you're one of those message kids, aren't you? Which is a joke about how she actually does like the art part of Hollywood. She thinks movies shouldn't just be like popcorn blockbusters just for entertainment and escapism. They should mean something, like the films we watch in class. He's trying to make like the next Mission Impossible movie, which is a very entertaining roller coaster, but doesn't really mean anything. But he's capable of, but has given up on, making art movies like 2001 and Persona. Now, I'm exaggerating because those wouldn't have existed in 1950. But the point is he's capable of making art things. And this discussion they have about being a message kid, the belief that a movie should have something to say, like a work of art, is something we've been talking about all semester long. That's why I started out with 2001, which is like an art movie, and then Rear Window, which is entertaining but also smart. Whereas 2001 is much more challenging. Rear Window is just fun, but it's also clever. Okay, so they talk about this idea about having talent versus earning a living, right? He makes this joke about like, well, having talent is one thing, but I got to make money. I got to live. And Hollywood is not supporting art. Hollywood is a business designed to make a lot of money by selling popcorn and making roller coaster movies. And he is trying. He tried to make art. He failed. He's poor, and now he's just trying to make a living by just making anything people will sit down and watch. It tells you a lot about his character. And he doesn't have the cash anymore. And by the way, it's also hilarious that the rich people in the movie complain about not having enough money. Right? The rich guy's like, oh, I bought too many properties and I'm not going to give you any money. And then his agent won't give him any money. And right, rich people bitch saying, oh, poverty's good for you. And rich people are like, oh, I have so much money. I'm having such a hard time. Like, fuck you guys. Of course you can say that. But it places him. He's surrounded by wealthy people and he doesn't have any money. And he's given up on art and to try to make movies people will actually watch. And then he gives up on that. And he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go back to Ohio and be a journalist, even though it's humiliating and everyone's going to make fun of me. At which point the guys see his car and try to repossess it. And he drives and hides it in Norma Desmond's garage. Cool. Okay. And that's pretty much that's the beginning of the movie. I don't remember if it's Act 1 or not. It might be Act 1. But it's probably the first 15 minutes. But that's the beginning of the film. But the whole point of that first 15-minute sequence is just to let you know all of those things about his character. And it's really well done, the way you can kind of see that he's a smart guy falling on hard times. Notice that they do that. They could have a whole section of him trying to make an art film and failing, right? But they do it quickly. Just the fact that he knows Dostoevsky and Joyce is like an efficient way of getting that across. Okay, I'm going to pick this up in the next video.